Well, good morning, Dr. Jennifer Stelter. Thank you for joining me. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me today. I appreciate it.
Of course, I'm really excited to hear more about your book. So, for those listening in, Dr. Stelter is the CEO of NeuroEssence LLC at the Dementia Connection Institute. She's the innovator and creator of the new Dementia Connection model, and she's the author of the Busy Caregiver's Guide to Advanced Alzheimer Disease. So, thank you for joining us to talk a little bit more about your book. Can you share with us what your intent in writing the Busy Caregiver's Guide to Advanced Alzheimer's Disease was? Who is it for?
Absolutely. So, when I started on this journey, a little bit of history, I have always wanted to write a book since I was 18. Didn't know what that would be, how that would look, didn't know any of that. My career as I got into schooling and wanted to be a clinical psychologist, I my first half of my career was in mental health. And so I was sure set that I was going to write a book probably about how to manage various types of mental health concerns and challenges.
Of course.
Um, and then from there, my career shifted really. And like most people in senior living, they kind of fall into it and then they fell in love with it, right? And that's what happened to me. I had the opportunity to be able to work with an organization here in the Midwest where they were opening up a behavioral health program at one of their sites. And so that's how I kind of fell into senior living. And so had the luxury of being able to do that and then quickly worked up the ranks and had the ability to oversee multiple programs within that company, dementia care being one of them. And so when that had occurred, just the stars had aligned, to be honest with you. When I started to work hand in hand with people who are living with dementia, the staff, their families, it just was really a love at first sight, to be honest. When I would work with these individuals, at the time, I was actually having young children. I was had my son. I was pregnant with my daughter. Then, had my daughter thereafter. And when I would come home from work and I would be caring for my children, I noticed such a parallel in the abilities between the two people, my children and then individuals living with dementia. And being able to focus on those abilities and being able to reinforce those abilities in ways that set my children up for success, I thought, can I do this with people living with dementia too? And so what I did was I brought some of those tools to the senior living environment. I worked with the staff, I worked with families, and we found success after success after success. So at that time, I didn't really know I had something there. I was just kind of like, hearing the pain points of a lot of our staff. They were saying things like, I never learned about dementia care in school. I'm a nurse. I'm a CNA and they never taught me this in my certification program. And I was floored by that. I was like, what? Like, how do you not learn about that? I mean, it's something that's prevalent within nursing care. Most people have either heard of it or been touched by it in some way. I was just shocked by that. And so they had said, yes, my first training is with you, Dr. Stelter, or my first training was with my first organization that I joined, outside of school. And they had to teach me everything that I knew. And I said, God, there's just got to be a better way. And so, when I started to work with individuals hands-on using the different techniques that are now in the model, and them opening up their eyes and just really seeing that aha moment for them when they're like, this makes sense. I said, I have something here. I have something here and I don't know what it is. I'm not quite sure. So I network with a lot of colleagues. I went to conferences. I even did a lot of self-teaching as well, as I also did not get an in-depth look at dementia in my schooling, being a clinical psychologist. And, I didn't specialize in neuropsychology, specifically. And so with that said, I did a lot of that, over a period of 12 years and was able to utilize a lot of the strategies that I had implemented. And so it all came to culmination where I said, I think I have a model of care here. And, people like professional caregivers, people like family caregivers, they need this.
Yes.
And so with that, I actually I said, this is my book. I'm going to write a book about this, right? And so I had extended the offer, wrote a couple of what they call like book script, where you send these out to various publishing companies. And unfortunately, I got denial after denial, which is not surprising. You know, it happens in our industry, but of course it's discouraging. And so
Of
I was about
course.
to, so I was about to give up. And my husband said, "You are not giving up." And so he actually looked up a few more places, and Johns Hopkins was on there. And I sent my book script to them. And I remember the day that they called me and said, "We want your book. We want to support what you're doing. We love your model." And I said, "Unbelievable." And so that's kind of how it evolved. And so, you know, honestly, I wrote it with the intention because I just saw the pain points of people who are caring with those living with dementia and how it impacted those people with dementia. And I said, there's just got to be a better way. And that's really why this really all evolved, to be honest.
That is such an incredible journey that you started off in one place and you ended up somewhere completely different, but
Yes.
able to take everything that you knew up to that point, and now you're helping so many people. I got goosebumps when you told me that Johns Hopkins picked up the phone and called you.
Absolutely.
So you can say that, I guess, your inspiration was partly your children, partly the people that you
Mhm.
served, and
Yes.
partly the staff that you worked with.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was really a nice synergistic relationship between the three. And it was a wonderful way to just understand that in our industry, we really can take things to the next level. And so with that said, you know, I said, I want to be a part of that. How can I take this industry to the next level?
That's amazing. You saw a need and you filled it. So what makes the dementia connection model different from the other models of care that are out there already?
Yes. So, you know, there's three pillars in the dementia connection model. One is the theory of retrogenesis. One is the active habilitation, and then the third is the approach to care, which is sensory stimulation. And these three entities are not new in our industry. Okay, what is new is that really I'm the first one to kind of tie it all together, right? And so the theory of retrogenesis is an explanation, right? It's an understanding of, you know, the why. Why does my loved one, you know, do the things that they do? Or why can't they do the things that they used to do, right? Or, you know, my resident who I'm caring for, right? So the theory of retrogenesis is really an explanation and an understanding. And when I was explaining, you know, the fact that individuals with dementia are going back to infancy, and that, you know, as a caregiver, you can put yourself in that person's shoes to understand, yes, there's our you know, abilities that they don't have anymore, but let's focus on the abilities that they do have. And there are abilities that, you know, adolescents have if we were to compare, right? And so we have to understand that things going in reverse towards infancy are really something where their emotional, their mental, their physical capabilities are all compromised. But with that said, we need to pinpoint out those abilities. So it allows that person to be able to gain a better understanding. It allows them to decrease frustration, have better acceptance, right? So the theory itself has been around in our, like I said, in our industry for a number of years. It was developed by Dr. Barry Reisberg and his research, but I used it in this model so that way there was a clear understanding of what's occurring, and for that caregiver to put that person in that person's shoes. And that's really the intention of that. You know, the active habilitation just shows the how, right? We need to be consistent. We need to be structured about how we're approaching those with dementia to do things in the same way. And that works really well with people with dementia and with children, of course. And then the third is the approach to care, which is sensory stimulation. Again, a lot of folks use sensory stimulation. They just don't know they're doing it. And they're not really tying the success of it to the outcomes they're looking for with the person they're caring for. And so with that said, it's really an emphasis on this, and to really understand the clinical side of it, of why sensory stimulation is a successful intervention because of how our brain works. Okay. And this really is for all of us, right? In that essence. So the model is different in that it ties these three entities together that has never really been done before. And so it's really a way to understand it. It's a way to approach it. It's a way to intervene, right? All in one model, which is really different from a lot of other models.
That was something that intrigued me when I picked up your book, was first how approachable it was, because you are looking at or giving a clinical picture to a lot of people who don't have a clinical background. But you do it in a way that is really approachable and easy for us to not just understand, but as you said, it's a full package. So we understand the why, we understand the how, and then we feel like we can actually do something. You give us the confidence to take action as soon as you put the book down. You
Thank you
have
so much.
interventions that you can do. So what are some examples of some of these actions or interventions that people can do right away with their loved one or the people that they're caring for?
Absolutely. So just think anything sensory based. So it's what we see, what we hear, touch, taste, feel, right? You want the experience to be positive. Okay. So the dementia connection model is a cognitive behavioral theory in essence. And so what that means is how our mind works as humans is that when there is an event that occurs, right? Something in the environment or a situation happens, we have thoughts about that situation. Those thoughts might be positive, they might be negative, they might be irrational, they might be rational, productive, unproductive, you get it, right? So those thoughts then influence feelings. They influence feelings of whatever the thoughts, whatever that realm of thoughts were. So if it was positive thoughts, it's going to influence positive feelings. Negative thoughts influence negative feelings, right? And then what happens from there is it influences our behaviors, right? So if I have negative thoughts, I have negative feelings, I'm going to have negative behaviors, right? Positive thoughts, positive feelings, positive behaviors, right? That's cognitive behavioral theory in its essence, right? So I took that theory and I moved it towards people, working with people with dementia. And I said to myself, okay, the thought process may not totally be there for people with dementia because they're losing their cognitive abilities, okay? And when you look at an adolescent, how their first 5 years of life, how they structure things is they're navigating their world using their senses, okay? They don't have a ton of thoughts that really are articulative, okay? They show, adolescents show their feelings through their behaviors. And we notice that with people with dementia. So the thought process is skipped, but essentially goes from event to feelings to behaviors, right? But in between there, we know that there's memories that are formed, okay? So what we can do in essence with the approach is we want to introduce positive stimuli into the environment and around that person in order to influence positive feelings, memories, and behaviors, essentially, right? So you think about like gustatory stimulation is what we eat. What is the person's favorite foods, right? Have those on hand, right? As much as possible, keeping in mind, a nice structured diet, right? And moderation with sweets and things like that. But let's allow them to have those things, right? What's their favorite music? That's auditory stimulation, right? So playing their favorite music can help to calm them. It might ignite feelings of happiness. It might ignite feelings of empowerment, right? So what are those tunes that they like? Olfactory stimulation. My business partner, Jessica Ryan, she's a biologist by trade, and she's an aromatherapy expert. And so when we decided to bring this together, she was really the one that spearheaded the aromatherapy component of the dementia connection model. And so with that, we use a lot of essential oils when we work with people living with dementia, because we find that the research behind those essential oils and what they do to the brain and the body are magnificent. And so there are particular oils that can really bring about, intentional types of feelings that we want. So if we want to improve their mood, we're going to use a citrus scent. If we want to help increase mental clarity, we're going to use a peppermint, right? If we're looking to calm them and relax them, reduce that anxiety, we're going to use lavender, right? And essentially, again, when you're using these various types of sensory stimuli, it is going to influence those feelings, then memories, and then behavior, right? And so the intention, right, is to use all kinds of positive stimuli as much as possible in order to influence those positive feelings, memories, and behaviors. Now, we also have to keep in mind, we're also a stimuli, right? They can see us, they can hear us, right? They can touch us. So we have to make sure when we're interacting with that person that we are, in essence, a positive stimuli, smile on our face, right? A bright glow, a calm demeanor, right? And, really trying to use us as a way to have that positive stimuli. Now, what I found over time is, with that memory component, I just want to point this out, is that the person with dementia will start to learn how they feel with you. So if you're presenting the positive stimuli, they're going to connect to you. And, we often get this question because we just launched some certification programs through our institute. And they say, well, how come a family caregiver and a professional caregiver can get the same certification, right? And, the reason really is because a person with dementia doesn't care about your degree. They don't care how many years you went to school. They care about how they feel with you. So the certification program is a certification in how to connect to that person better, right? It's not really about trying to, yes, for a professional, it's going to take you to the next level, but really it's about learning how to connect to that person in a meaningful way. And that's all the person with dementia cares about. And so, that's really what, inspired with the model and those kinds of things. But I think I'm kind of long-winded of your question, but nonetheless, it's something where you can use these various positive stimuli in order to influence them in positive ways based on how the brain works.
That's amazing. It's there's a quote that is in the dementia care space, and I'm paraphrasing, but something to the effect of, they may not remember your name, but they'll remember the way that you made them feel.
Exactly.
And this just shows that there's evidence, there's science behind that, and that you can use that to deepen your connection with this person.
Exactly.
For me, I have a background of Alzheimer's in my family. So for those who are family caregivers, I like your use of the word intention, because you are doing all of these things, these positive stimuli you're using to the advantage of improving the day of the person that you love, but you're doing it with intention. And it does lead to that deeper connection. And that's true to my experience when caring for a loved one, is you meet them where they're at and you learn something new about them, and you can share in their favorite music and their favorite foods and their positive reactions and emotions to them. So then you get to be a part of their world in a sense.
Exactly, because, oftentimes, especially if you're, like you're saying, a family caregiver, there's always questions of like, well, I don't know who she is anymore. And I don't know what to say. I don't know what to talk about. And
or
when you're using
who I am.
Right. Yeah. And so when you're using the dementia connection model, you don't have to come up with answers to those questions. Simply turn on their favorite music, or, diffuse some oils that they enjoy, or, take out, a furry friend, that you can use, like whether they have a real live pet there, or, there's a sensory pet that's available, right? These are things that you don't need to necessarily go to school for to use, or that you need to come up with answers. But if you are using these things, it's going to, create a positive impact, and of course, more importantly, a positive connection.
Beautiful. And I mean, the title is The Busy Caregiver's Guide to Advanced Alzheimer's, but I assume this is applicable to other forms of dementia as well.
It is. We have used this model, with all kinds of dementias. And so it's not specific to Alzheimer's, because the function of the brain is still the same. And I didn't go into it, but I want to just go into it here, is essentially when you take in stimuli to your brain, it's either directly or indirectly influencing the limbic system of the brain. And in the limbic system, there are two really important parts. There are the amygdala. There's the amygdala, which influences our emotions and create emotional feelings. And then there's the hippocampus, which creates our memories. And so whether we're taking in stimuli through our nose, our eyes, our ears, our fingertips, our mouth, it's all going to eventually be processed in the limbic system. And so that's why it's so powerful and it works. So it doesn't matter if the person has Alzheimer's disease, Lewy bodies, frontal temporal, it doesn't really matter. The tools you may use may change. For example, we talk a lot about infant doll therapy. Okay. Infant doll therapy does work well with those who are moderate to late stage in Alzheimer's. It may not work with an individual who has frontal temporal dementia, because their cognition isn't necessarily declining early on in the disease, and even in the moderate parts of the disease. So, that particular, offering an infant doll may not work with someone with frontal temporal dementia, but you can still use aromatherapy. You can still use their favorite foods. You can still use music, right? So yes, it is generalized and can be applicable to other dementias as well, which is wonderful. And it really does help to equip that person with all kinds of tools that they can use. And we call it the busy caregivers because we know we're all busy, right? And so with the workbook style in there that we have, there's pages after each chapter that you can take notes of what worked and what didn't work, or what you want to try. And so the hope is that at the end of the book, you have a full toolbox. And so that's all kind of, along the way, you're taking these notes to kind of help because we're so busy.
So the Busy Caregiver's Guide to Advanced Alzheimer's is, in essence, a toolbox for a family or professional caregiver and a starting point. So it has all of these strategies, but also you provide tools for the reader to actually implement those strategies. But you mentioned that there's also a certification course.
Absolutely. So we did a soft launch of our certification programs here in the summer, and then we are live here in September. So both professional caregivers and family caregivers can become dementia connection specialists, or DCSs. And so the course is a 6-hour course where they would learn anywhere from the basics of dementia all the way through, of course, what is the dementia connection model, how to apply it, but even more so, how to apply it within various aspects of the disease. So, if I'm taking care of someone's activities of daily living, their ADLs, if I'm helping to engage, if I'm, let's say, providing activities, if I'm looking for better ways to engage, if I'm trying to improve my communication, and even so, for us as caregivers, how can I be better at my self-care, right? And so the book is really, the certification program really goes into all of these realms within that 6-hour period. Now we do leave an hour for breaks and of course lunch, so technically is 7 hours, but it's a 6-hour course. And within that, you then are able to become credentialed as a DCS. And so again, both kinds of professionals or both kinds of caregivers can become credentialed. And then for our professionals, if they do need continuing education credits or CEs, we are able to provide those as well. And so it really is a nice way to walk away with a nice, well-rounded understanding of the model, how to apply it, how to use it in various aspects of care. And then really to build the confidence and competence of that person, knowing that they have the tools and abilities to connect to that person. So that is offered now. If you go to our website, dementiaconnectioninstitute.org, and click on our certification programs tab, you can learn more about that certification. Now, we also created one for healthcare professionals where they can become dementia connection specialist certified trainers, so DCSCTs, where they can actually join our mission. And our mission at the Institute, the Dementia Connection Institute, is really to spread the love of dementia education and support. We want to be able to reach as many people as possible because, as we started off with this podcast, right, is that everyone still needs to benefit from gaining the knowledge of dementia care because it's not even done in our schooling, right? So we know that everyone either has heard of it or is touched by it or will be touched by it at some point. And so with that said, we need help trying to spread this love of education. So if we can get more trainers on board to do that, that's great. And so we welcome healthcare professionals to apply to become a DCSCT, and it's nice, it puts extra cash in their pocket as well. So we can't argue with that. So
I did have the privilege of actually attending the soft launch of your courses. And I can say, having read the book and then having attended the course, as a healthcare professional, it was exactly what I was looking for. But something that I didn't expect when I was learning this dementia connection model and these strategies is wishing I had had it when I was a family caregiver as well. So I think that it's equally beneficial for whether you are an official caregiver in an organization, in a memory care unit, or if you are taking care of an aging loved one at home who's showing signs of dementia and Alzheimer's. It's beneficial for wherever you're at and wherever your loved one is at.
Thank you. We get that quite often where people say, I wish I knew what I know now. I wish I knew that back then. And so we do hope that we can touch people's lives as they are caregiving, and and for those who were caregivers and maybe their loved one has passed on, that they can join the team and they can help us to spread that love, knowing what they went through, and then knowing what they can do to impact this field as well.
Absolutely. Pay it forward, so to
Absolutely.
speak, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I think that whenever we go through something, we go through it for a reason. And sometimes that reason is just so that the next person who goes through it doesn't go through it by themselves. So
Exactly.
that is, this is one tool that you can help that person that you're going to be going through it with, either now or in the future. If readers want more information or resources after reading the Busy Caregiver's Guide to Advanced Alzheimer's Disease, can you remind us where we would go for that?
Absolutely. They can go to our website, dementiaconnectioninstitute.org, or they can simply email us at support@neuroessence.org.
And where can they buy the book? Is it available anywhere or?
Yeah, it's available at Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, and Johns Hopkins Press website.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Jennifer. Is there anything else that you wanted to add before we finish today for our listeners?
I just want to say, education is powerful, right? So if you're in a position where you're a caregiver or you work in the industry, just educate yourself. That's what's really important. And we know that in this field of dementia care, we're learning more and more each day. And so, and there's still no cure. So there's more to be learned. And so just continue to educate yourself. That's our motto here at our institute, really, is to continue to educate people and support them as much as possible. And so, with that said, whether you're doing it through our institute or another entity, please just educate yourself and empower yourself to have that insight, to know how to move forward and to be able to provide those resources to other people as well. So thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Dr. Stelter. I will send, for those who are listening on our podcast today, I will send the link to the Dementia Connection Institute, as well as a link to the Busy Caregiver's Guide to Advanced Alzheimer's Disease. If this is something that you would like to, as Dr. Stelter said, educate yourself more on so that you can feel empowered and you can empower the people that you're serving as well. Have a good day, Dr. Stelter. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care.